Yeah.
So everybody, this is the Parable Arrows video podcast. I am Josh, and I am joined by none other than the legendary Nick.
Hey, how's it going?
Fried maker.
Hey, you said it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, good job. I'm really proud of you.
Was it German?
It is German, yeah. A lot of people like to say Friedenmacher.
Friedenmacher?
And they try to get it really German, but
Friedenmacher.
say it like an American.
Friedenmacher.
Yeah, say it Friday, yeah.
So I'm joined by Nick. We have known each other for a really long time when I think about it, since I was in high school, right?
True. And when
now-
you graduated high school in what year?
2012.
Yep.
What time did you come to Eastbrook?
I started helping out in Eastbrook in 2010.
Wow. So that was my sophomore year. And now you're
Yeah.
big tuna youth pastor at
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So Nick is joining me today to talk about Star Wars. So I feel like I hate that I have to say this to start out, but this is not going to be one of those like, you know, the original four or the greatest. Yeah, it's not going to be one of those discussions. As we do with all of our stories, we're trying to dig deeper into how can we engage the media that we love, the stories that we love, to then further understand each other, God, the world, stuff like that. So if you're looking for a Star Wars critique and how it's not what it used to be and blah, blah, blah.
There's like 5 million other videos for that.
YouTube hate for Star Wars, and you'll find it. That's
see you in 3 years.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. So anyway, to kick off, after we've gone through that disclaimer, I already asked you what your favorite Star Wars quote was. You said Ahsoka when she says, "I'm no Jedi."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Episodes 1 through 3,
Yep.
4 through 6,
Yep.
7 and 9.
Yep.
How would you rank them based on the story?
Based on the
Not
story,
on, like,
not
just-
on my feelings.
Not on your emotions
Yeah,
and how,
yeah.
you know, little Nick, when he saw the first 4 or whatever.
I would say based on the story, I do think that the sequels offer the prequels, excuse me, offer probably the most compelling story arc, right? Followed by, so like, you know, the original, and then way down the list, obviously the last 3. But there's still some good stuff in the last 3, and the sequels for sure.
I definitely want to come back to that because I feel the same. It was like there were gems that if they had been explored more, it could have been
exactly, for sure,
mind-blowing.
100%. Yeah.
But okay, so when you say the 1 through 3, why do you think that 1 through 3 stands narratively or has that? Regardless of execution, remember.
Right, we're not talking about CGI here.
What about 1 through 3 makes that the most compelling to you?
Well, I mean, I think it's a couple things. I think without the growth, like the growth of Anakin, and then the kind of like degrowth, the degeneration of Anakin, like the rest of Star Wars doesn't work. But also, I would say the same thing for Kenobi, right? Like you see Kenobi growing from like a little, like a kind of a brat in that first film to being, I don't know, to really being the person that like shapes a lot of Star Wars, even though he's kind of behind the scenes and stuff. So I think that is why. And I mean, despite like how we feel about some of the acting and stuff, I do think that like George was really like saying like, this is the story I was trying to like get your mind to like think about. Yeah. And I like the political stuff. And, all that stuff. Yeah,
totally.
Sure. Yep.
So that's an interesting point with like Anakin, because I think that's one of the parts that is so interesting to me is, when I was a kid, you love Star Wars because there's laser swords, space battles, and like force powers and stuff like that.
Space wizards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Space. Wizards in space.
Yeah.
And at the core though, you have, even as you said that idea of like, we've just been studying Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in Genesis in my 11th grade class, and just thinking through a lot of the Star Wars universe is actually very similar, where it's like, there's these generations of family traumas that get passed on, and
and it doesn't stop.
No, and it just keeps going even to the newest trilogy.
Yep.
But so when you were a kid and you were engaging with Star Wars, how much of it was kind of like the this has never been done before? And
Right.
when did it kind of hit you, or what age did it hit you that you're like, whoa, there's actually a lot of stuff going on here that's actually pretty deep?
I mean, so like I remember seeing. So I'm old enough to remember when the prequel trilogy was in theaters, right?
Sure. Yep.
So I remember seeing the original trilogy at home with my parents and being like, yeah, space wizards, very fun, people flying through space and stuff. And then I didn't really re-engage with Star Wars. I didn't see any of the prequels in theaters. And I didn't really re-engage with Star Wars until I was probably in my early 20s.
Okay.
So like fairly recent in my history.
Sure.
And that's when I was like, wow, there's more going on here than space wizards. I mean, we could talk about other movies that it's just like, this is nothing. This is just like a shallow story about cool effects, right?
Yep.
But yeah, I think that with Star Wars, it hit me in my early 20s. I was like, there's more here. And so I started reading and, doing Star Wars discipleship a little bit.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like just like reading more books.
Yeah.
And like, at this point I've probably read well over 150 like legends and
Sure.
just like all the stories that are built out from Star Wars. So yeah.
Are they all canon, or are they?
I've read all the canon stuff, but then I've read a lot of the like pre-Disney purchase.
Gotcha.
Like stuff that was canon but is no longer canon. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know we do a unit on the Mandalorian, and kids have to dive into like Mandalorian culture and stuff like that. And so I know it's kind of a pivot from the prequels, but so in that, I think one thing I'd be curious to hear from you. So I know you've got 3 kids, right?
Yep.
Three young ones.
Yep.
Are they at that age where they're starting to like be old enough to enjoy stuff like Star Wars?
Oh yeah.
You and the missus kind of like brought that in.
Oh yeah. So like Sean and Luke are their 2 oldest.
Yeah.
And they both have seen 1 through 7.
Gotcha.
So we haven't we just like there's a lot of like heavy emotional stuff in the Last Jedi, right? And so we're gonna wait on that.
Yeah.
No, I think we're getting close to being out. They've watched all of the Ahsoka series. They've watched some of the Mandalorian series. So yes, they're engaged way more deeply than I was at their age.
Sure. Just like shift their chin.
They're just, I mean, like, and I can like have a conversation with my oldest, like who is not quite 10, about like some of the intricacies of like Ahsoka and Ezra and stuff, kind of some of that non main storyline stuff that he's really into.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What do you think is resonating with him?
I mean, I think for him, a lot of it is that there are stories out there about people who are not really like the main person, right? Like if you really get into like some of the like the rebels and the like some of the like the stories where you are talking about how like rebel cells get formed, it's like people that aren't like the most important, but they're still making a big impact in the world. And I think that that's really what like clicks on him. Also, he likes space wizards. Yeah. To be honest with you, he's like he loves the like he talks about the ships. He knows a lot more about that kind of stuff. He's got the like encyclopedias with all the ships in it, and like he's like, oh, blah blah blah. Yeah. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I love hearing that even at his age, he's starting to see beyond just the fanfare and the the sci-fi.
That's because I make sure he's like, let's talk about that, right?
So,
like, yeah, exactly, yeah.
So tell me about this, because that to me is exactly why our platform is trying to grow, is because I think that is what is missing in a lot of like parent-child relationships where you could be like, no, you little nerd, like, Star Wars, but this is actually an insight into his heart and into what he cares about because of his fandom and like what he's wrestling with. So what are those and you said he's not even 10 yet. So
he'll be 10 this month. So
and he's the oldest.
He's the oldest. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So what are those conversations like? Coach us through that. Like, what does that conversation look like for you to actually make sure? Like you said, you were like, oh, he doesn't just do that. Like I'm teaching him how to like, see that. But what is that?
I mean, I think a lot of it is like, again, a lot of the episode series, however you say that word, they always end usually in a kind of a heavy spot, right? So we'll like watch it, and then it's not just like, all right, go to bed. Yeah. It's like, so what did you think about that? Like, it's kind of, we try to be really intentional in the immediate for 2 reasons. One, he's got a lot of anxiety. So sometimes like if we don't talk it out, he'll go to bed and be up for like hours being like, oh no, what's going to happen? Like, yeah. And so there's that end of it. But the other end of it is just being like, there's more than it meets the eye. And so it's just like, what did you think of this? And then sometimes we let him lead the conversation a little bit after we ask that initial question. Every once in a while, he'll be like, Ezra is kind of, or Kanan in the Rebels series is kind of like Jesus, like he sacrificed himself, right?
Wow.
And I mean, he's a smart kid, so like he's making these connections, and pastors' kids and all, right? But he's making these connections, and so we'll like be like, yeah, he did sacrifice himself. Like he saw that his friends were in trouble, and so he chose to put himself in a place where he knew that the outcome would be his death, and he made that choice. And so it's bring her back to Christ. Yeah.
Which you have to do if you're
right. Again, pastor's kid. But but so I think some of it's self-led, some of it is just asking the right questions. Like, what did you think of this choice that this person made?
Yeah.
But also not being like super aggressive about it, because I think that we've made that mistake. Sometimes we're like, oh yeah, did you see this thing that was just like blah 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 or whatever? And Sean's like,
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know. We're like, that was too much.
Yeah.
And he will be really honest. He'll be like, I don't really understand what you're asking.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah.